Leadership is a skill. It's a skill that you have to develop.
What about stakeholder teams? How do you deal with that? And they're just looking at the tip of the iceberg. Any advice for people who think they are being misled, where they believe that leadership is out of touch?
So misled and out of touch are two very different things. Misled usually means intentional nefarious intent, right? I'm intentionally misleading you. So if you truly believe you're in an organization where you actively feel like you're being misled, that's one where I think you should have trust in the organization. You believe that the organization isn't looking at, it doesn't have your interests or even you have to look at the situation. Right question. There's always ways to talk about very difficult news and being transparent, like cost reductions and potential cost cuts, and just say this is something that we have to look at. Now, what the other side of it was out of touch. Out of touch is different. Out of touch is coming from a place of either arrogance or ignorance. And then you have to look at, is it because of arrogance? And is that person always going to be out of touch? That's where you need to navigate to see. Everybody has some sort of somebody that they trust. And that's where you need to get the information to that individual. If that person is arrogant where they're not taking it in. If they're ignorant, hopefully they have the capability to learn.
So sometimes leaders don't lead well. They lead less than positive.
Leadership is a skill, and it's a skill that you have to develop. Some people have that innate ability. They can naturally do it. Some people need coaching. If that individual's not open for coaching, even through things like, your employee satisfaction surveys is not getting the message, there's only so much you can do, right? And then I think that's where you need to make the choices.
In a situation where you're being badly led, and how did you go about it?
Like I said before, I usually have a relationship with my bosses. I'm of the opinion is that I am going to be very open and honest with you. And if it's something that you got to do it constructively, right? You just don't throw a tantrum, but you do it constructively. And if that's something that you're uncomfortable with hearing, if you have a negative reaction, a long-term negative reaction, everybody's gonna feel uncomfortable. Everybody may have an initial negative reaction, right? But after it sinks in and they think about it, and then there's some sort of change in behavior or change in responsibilities where you're, clearly that impacted your relationship negatively, I could look for another opportunity. That's clear because, you provided the input, you provided the honesty. And most of us on this call are fortunate to be in an industry where we have those choices. There's some industries that you just deal with.
People don't quit jobs, they quit managers.
If one doesn't trust the leader, escalation is perfectly legal. Smiley face, of course. Schedule a sync with the skip and share the concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Doing a skip level with the manager above is always an option. I don't take that route personally. I try sideways.
What did you mean by sideways?
I use peers, trusted advisors or peers provide that feedback to go sideways to that individual and try to help them. Always do a skip level with the manager, with their manager. You need to do it in a very clear, direct way. You need to practice that 30 minutes ahead of time so you don't ramble. You need to have no more than 2 or 3 points, right? Focus on those points, focus on that feedback. And it needs to be factual, not, if you use the words like sometimes and always, that ain't gonna work. You need to be very factual about that rather than just complaining and whining.
I think the next poll question is going to be impeccable. How is mastering a skill like leadership? When considering the 1,000-hour rule for mastering a skill like leadership, where do you think that you currently stand in your journey? How are you mastering your leadership so that you don't apply the iceberg principle yourself?
Just because I put halfway there. I still have lots to learn. Just because you got, butts in seats doesn't necessarily mean quality. In our technology industry that most of us are in, time in socket or time in seat, just by natural progression, you move forward.
When you say naturally we move forward, what comes out of that? Is that the whole spectrum, good, bad, anywhere in between? What happens?
Depends how connected people are. The classic case is in the military, right? That's the classic organization of you check the boxes, you put in your time, you move forward to the next rank. Sometimes it's bad, but it's very, it's a formula. Another one would be in a lot of the other service industries or, blue collar type jobs.
Are you saying that we got to battle test whatever time we spend learning any skill and see does it hold true across It's a daytime, nighttime with person A, person B.
Tenure is not always a given, right?
Mm-hmm.
In organizations where tenure is guaranteed and responsibility with tenure, that's usually poor leaders end up in leadership positions that way very quickly.
And I'm going to focus on what's in our control, which is ourselves. So how can a professional, people who are on the call right now or who will watch this later on YouTube or any other platform, how would you advise them to not fall trapped to this? How can they focus on what's in their control themselves?
So I think you need to assess what your commitment level is and what your goals are. One thing that's guaranteed in your career is that it's going to change, right? You're going to find different roles, different opportunities. And if your commitment level to the organization or what you're doing is high, then what I would say is try to have as an open conversation as possible with your manager. Make sure that you're getting from your manager the coaching, or if not, get it from an outside source so that you're getting and you're growing and developing. If you're getting challenging assignments and that fit what your growth is, that's good. If not, then I would start looking intra-company for other opportunities after you've exhausted the feedback route and the feedback route and tried to have those conversations with your leader.
So we talked about management, so it seems like it's mono-directional, in the same direction. What about stakeholder teams? So you're rubbing against people who are illogical, but they're not in your management chain, they're outside. How do you deal with that? And they're just looking at the tip of the iceberg.
So I would really try to understand their motivation. What is it that's driving them? If you're kind of rubbing, there's a little friction there. It requires two things to move, right? One may move only a little bit, you're moving a lot. Then figure out what their objectives are. So you just got to understand why they're acting that way. I find a lot of it is through just motivations that are not service level motivation. And it just takes you time to try to understand and have a human interaction with that individual. Some people aren't open to it. I've run across a few that are very robotic. If they're robotic, then they're just extremely logical. And, I say everybody's got a 100 crayon box. Some people have a mix of colors. Some people have all shades of blue. And if they have all shades of blue, figure, that means they're going to be very focused in one area. People with a lot of colors can kind of adapt and work with lots of different people, right? And kind of drive those conversations with all sorts of people. So, understand logically where that person is and what their motivations are is the most important thing, in my opinion. And sometimes you can't figure it out. You just have to deal with it if you're committed. If you're not committed, then at will both ways, right? You have to remember that.
For some people, they might dismiss this, might not believe in it. You've seen leaders of different kinds. They might think that you got to just power through it, get to the point, get results. So how do you engage when people are dismissive of these practices? Because it actually resonates with the book that I'm writing, Hurry Up Slowly. You literally have to slow down, ask people. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time. But we live in this age where we don't have time.
I kind of go back to the what every contractor's told me. I tell them you can either have it high quality, fast, or cheap, but you can't have all three. What I've been is honestly, look, I can solve this today and I'll change the behavior today, but the behavior's not going to last and it can have other repercussions. So I could do it a short fix, but I want to do a long fix. And this is what I'm going to do, right? So give them the option. If they say, no, just do the short fix and don't worry about it, just be clear of the repercussions. Okay, then here's what the risk is. You're risking morale, financials. You could be risking next quarterly results, depending upon the situation, right? You're so focused on this quarter results, you're jeopardizing next quarter results or next year results, right? So I think you just have to be clear on those expectations. And I always do this. I will write a short email. Hey, for the records, here's what we discussed. I want to make sure, here's what I'm approach. Here's what, I recommend. Here's the, positive, negative, whatever. And it doesn't need to be like for documentation. Just here's what we're doing. Just, in your friendly way. Just send it off. And then I've used that. I said, and then I do the Columbo. I said, I don't remember that we talked about this. Do you remember? I think I sent you an email. Hey, here it is. And then you pull it up. We got into this with the best intentions. Well, allow me to retort. You always got to have a Pulp Fiction quote.
The more you know, you realize that you have more to learn. And I think that's so true. And I think when you realize that, and to your point, the previous question is, have you mastered your skill? Jack, I think you rightfully said, as a true leader, you're not even halfway there, which tells me that you're ahead of so many other people because of your thirst for knowledge.